All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. So our special guest today is Kate Beirness. She first made her TSN debut on December of 2009. During that time, Kate has hosted a number of marquee events. She was the host for TSN Olympic Morning in 2012, March Madness, NBA Draft, was a staple on the Craft Celebration Tour for 4 years, host for the BioSteel All-Canadian Game, and co-host for the Grey Cup Saturday and Sunday, along with hosting the SportsCentre Morning Loop. If you have been watching the Raptors game, and I really, really hope you have been, she has been front and center on TSN's coverage.
What you might not know is that Kate is a graduate of Ontario Tech University and a former member of the Durham Lords broadcast team. Please join us in welcome Kate Beirness.
Hi, everybody. I'm assuming everyone's saying hello there. I just can't hear them.
Great. All right. So just so everyone knows, my name is Sydney. I'm one of the moderators for today. And okay, so we're going to be starting off with just a few questions. We already have some people putting in some questions. So the first question, Kate, that I have is what does one person need to land a role like you have?
First of all, I want to weigh in on the poll because it's in progress right now. And if anyone voted that the Raptors would not win in Game 7 or that the greatest Raptor of all time is not Kyle Lowry, then you can please leave the Zoom meeting, to be quite honest. No, honestly, thank you. Before I get started, I just want to thank you guys for having me. I've literally been covering, I mean, everybody knows what's going on right now, hopefully. And today's just been SportsCentre hits, and then I'm doing this and then doing CTV and then back to the Game 7 tomorrow. So this is a really nice break just to sit and chat with some of you guys, even though I can only obviously see a couple of you. I think, it's a hard question to answer, landing a role, if you will. But I think always my biggest thing is I knew I was so incredibly passionate about sports, specifically basketball. And I knew that I actually couldn't live without it. And I know you two ladies both play on the Durham College team and on the Ontario Tech team. And I wasn't that good that I could even make that level, but I just absolutely loved it. When I stopped playing, I blew out my right knee. I knew there just had to be a way to get back into it. And I know it's the most cliche thing in the entire world. But the one thing that I always did in basketball was I never let anyone outwork me. And I think that can be something that you can use in every facet of your life. And I knew that if I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, because I truly thought it was the next best thing to being a pro athlete, which I still believe to this day, then I'm definitely going to have to outwork everyone because it's a job I know a lot of people want. So to land it, I had to do a ton of stuff that I had to cover a lot of things that I knew I wouldn't be covering for the rest of my career. I did a lot of news. I'm not a fan of doing the news because it's not fun 95% of the time. I was my own videographer. I wrote my own stories. I cut my own highlights. I wrote my own highlights. I did every facet of the job. And doing those things that maybe, you're not as passionate about leads you to your ultimate job. So I think, and I didn't get paid too. So not making money really sucks, but sometimes it's important. So I just think that, as I said, it's the most cliche thing. But in life, if you've got a really amazing work ethic and you can work at whatever you want to end up doing, then you're probably going to be successful no matter what.
Perfect.
Okay, so the second question that came in is, what do you miss about your time at Ontario Tech?
Everything. No, what was the bar called? Shagwell's on the Ridge?
Yeah.
Is that still there?
Yeah.
Yes, I miss Shagwell's on the Ridge. No, you know what? I think one of the greatest parts of being at Ontario Tech, it was UIT when I was there, and Durham College as well, because they're just so interconnected, was the fact that they gave me this opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I was at a real crossroads in university. As I said, I'd played basketball forever. All I did was gym class and play basketball. I didn't know what else to do. And, they gave me an opportunity to be on the Durham Lords broadcasting team. It allowed me to go and explore Rogers TV, which was right down the road at the time. And it just gave me this sense of, you know what, take this time, take these 4 years, maybe 5, and learn what you want to do and hone your own craft. So I think the thing I missed the most was, you know, just having that time to really kind of find myself and find my footing in life, and the support that I got from definitely my profs and from the athletic department at Durham College and UIT. And Shagwell's on the Ridge, obviously.
Oh, you have to have fun, I think, when you're in college. It's one of those biggest things. You have to. Next
True
question is, what is the most unique thing about you?
Oh, man, these are I thought it was going to be like all just Raptor questions. I thought people were going to be like, what's Kyle Lowry like? The most unique thing about me, I don't think that, honestly, I really don't think there's anything overly unique about me. I mean, yeah, I'm just, honestly, at heart, I'm just a tomboy who absolutely loves sports and wish I could play sports 24/7. And I think there's absolutely a ton of people in the world like me. I think a uniqueness might be just attitude wise. You know, even when the Raptors, for example, got blown out a couple times here by the Boston Celtics in this series, I always find a silver lining in it. I'm like, you know what, that game really sucked, but let me tell you something really good that I found in that game, like one particular player who did something. So maybe a slightly unique trait is it takes a lot for me to be negative. Like it's got to be like the worst thing in the world that I'm like, ooh, that's not a good thing. So I'm going to go with just my positive attitude being a little more unique, like probably too positive. You know what I mean? Like I need to be a little more critical of things.
This is a question for me. What does a typical working day look like for you?
Well, this hair doesn't do itself, unfortunately, Alyssa. This takes a long time. It's honestly my least favorite part of my job, and I openly admit that. Thank goodness we have makeup artists, because this wouldn't happen on a daily basis. So the first thing I do, and I stress this to anyone who wants to get into journalism, anyone who gets into sports, is I get up and I read. And the great part about just like our iPhones is I'm on it way too much, but you literally have access to just this unbelievable wealth of knowledge. I subscribe to absolutely everything I possibly can, from the States to here at home. You know, I'm really big into The Athletic right now. I really love a couple of writers in there. So the first thing I do is I actually get up, have a cup of coffee, and I catch up on absolutely everything. I'm addicted to working out. I'm not afraid to admit it. And as I said, I still think I'm making the WNBA at 36. So I have a fitness routine. I will do something no matter what. Today I played basketball. I was actually outside. I was playing basketball for an hour, which was great. I had an hour to spare. I just find actually it's just good for my mental health, if anything. I find I used to be at a gym and think it was my sanctuary. I've now made my condominium into a home studio and a gym because of COVID. So I try to get that in at least for an hour and a half a day. And I normally jump on some type of conference call, depending on what we're doing that night. When it's with the Raptors, I work every single day. I don't know when the last day I had off, to be quite honest with you. So I jump on a conference call, and it would just depend. If they're not playing, I'd probably be doing some hits from my home studio here with Jack Armstrong and Sam Mitchell. And then I'd have the night off and I'd just watch basketball and analyze basketball, which doesn't suck. And if it's a game day tomorrow, for example, my first hit will be at noon. I'll have a bit of a break. I'll go in, I'll do hair and makeup at work for 4:30. I'll do SportsCentre hits into the 6 o'clock, take a bit of a break, watch the game, and then all the pregame, and then the game itself, and then post-game, I'll probably get home around 2 a.m. So game days are like a completely different animal. So yeah, it really just depends on what I'm covering, to be quite honest. But the one thing I can tell you is I got to do the hair and makeup every day, which really sucks.
Okay, here's one about an NBA player. Who's your favorite player to interview?
Oh, OG Anunoby. I just love OG. I was telling you girls before we got on the live here that I got a chance to speak to OG today from the bubble. So he's going to be my pre-tip story if you're watching the Raptor game tomorrow night. My favorite player to interview in the whole wide world, and I'm really biased, is Kyle Lowry. You know, I've been covering the team now, I don't know how many years, and Kyle, we've got a great relationship. It's not being cocky. It's just, it is what it is. And you guys are basketball players. You watch Kyle Lowry play and you know that he isn't, I mean, he's not the most athletically gifted guy in the entire world, but he uses every inch of his 6'1" body, and he will throw his body on the ground. He will take a charge, and then it's just kind of like interviews. You understand that, you know what I mean? Like you get that tenacity and that grit. And I think we kind of get that from one another. So, and he knows he can joke around with me too. Like we did our pre-interview before this season started. So I guess it was last September, and we were sitting down and I'm like, you know, Kyle, and I was really serious for some silly reason. I said, you know, Kyle, I said, the big story in the off season was Kawhi Leonard going to LA. And he's like, Kawhi left? I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Nobody told you? So he'll like joke as well. So I think I'm just the most comfortable with Kyle. So I'm super biased. So Kyle Lowry.
Another question is, how did your time at Ontario Tech and Durham help you prepare for your career?
I don't know why I'm remembering this all of a sudden. It allowed me to make mistakes. And I think one of the most important things in life, whether it be sports or careers, is you got to screw up. Because if you don't screw up and you're perfect all the way, then you're not human and you're lying. And I one day on the Riot Radio, is it still called the Riot Radio? Do you guys know?
Yes.
There you go. So we were doing Riot Radio, myself and this other guy, Andy McNamara, who's awesome. And I swore on air. And I know, don't go digging for the tapes because I don't want to see anything on like on Instagram or on Twitter later. But I said the S word, which is that bad, but it's just like, holy bleep. And I'm like, but then because it was just such a natural fan reaction, right? Because someone had just drilled the like longest 3-ball I had ever seen in OCAA history. And I'm just like, holy bleep. And then I remember both of us just looked at each other. And then I'm like, oh my God, my career's over. Like I'm never going to broadcast a day in my life again. They always say in broadcasting, make your mistakes young. And you know what, who cares? If you post it out now, so be it. I eat it and be done with it. But I think that was one of the best parts of being at UIT and Durham College, was it allowed me to do things like that and learn things like that. I've never sworn on air again. That's a lie. It actually slipped out once when I was doing an update. I said Tiger Woods instead of sitting second. I said the S word, but like, I mean, that's just a slip of the tongue. It's not like what I did at Durham College. So I think the best years were making those mistakes and learning from them for sure.
Next question is, I love listening to the Her Mark podcast and hearing about the mark that female athletes would like to leave on the world. What mark would you like to leave for future females in the sports industry?
That's awesome. First of all, thank you to whoever put that question in. Her Mark, for those of you guys who don't know, is a female empowering summit that we started up 5 years ago. And we basically came up with this concept that we wanted to show women in this country, young women in this country, 15 to 18 years old, it's currently open to, that, you know what, if you're confident, if you stay true to yourself, stick with sports if you can, that great things are ahead. And we turned it into a podcast. We certainly, try to interview as many great females as we can, because we have some incredible female athletes in this country. Like, I can't speak enough about them. All I'd say for like personally leaving my own mark is making sure the next generation behind me of females, and honestly, there's nothing against dudes. Like, I hope there's a million guys on this today too. And you guys are awesome as well. Not to disparage men at all, because we need men. We need men to fight for us too. Is the fact that I want the next generation of women to be stronger, more confident in themselves, and just more ambitious than my generation was. And that's kind of my biggest thing going forward, is instilling as much confidence as I possibly can in young women, because I just believe so much begins with how confident you are in your abilities in yourself.
Next question. Did you have to do any special courses to be able to analyze basketball?
Okay, this is a tricky one. I didn't. I know I mentioned it to you ladies. I have a doctorate here behind me from Ontario Tech. It's very legit. So I'm also a doctor. So that's got to count for something at some point. And somebody also commented on my Bears helmet. Thank you. I am a diehard Chicago Bears fan. It's been a few years. I did not. I did not take journalism. I did not study basketball. I mean, I say I didn't study basketball. I played it since I was 10 years old, and I played at rep. I mean, I got cut from the University of Western before I went to Ontario Tech. I also have my reffing certification. So, I mean, I know how to call the games. I would say my biggest thing, and I started playing like, not like fantasy, but I started like tracking in the papers when I was like 11, 12 years old. I knew I was different right from the get-go. But no, by no means would I say I took a course for it. But when you read and analyze something on a daily basis since you're like 10, 11, 12 years old, I think that that's pretty good. And you just learn. You learn from, I think the coolest part about being at TSN, and especially when we went on the run last year that we went on, it ended up obviously winning in Golden State, was just the amount of basketball minds I could be around. When I'm with an analyst, for example, I didn't play the game at their level. I try to really dial in to what they're trying to tell me. Even the other night, Leo Routens brought up something with Pascal Siakam when he's in the post. Pascal always goes to his right, and he always has a defender on his right shoulder, for example, and he'll never, ever just go to his left and lay up left. So it's just like this little minor thing. But again, this is coming from someone who's played the game at that level, and they can see that I can't see. You got to recognize what you can see and what you can't see and learn from those people. So being at TSN and being able to be around people in the NBA, being around the TNT crew last year, the ESPN crew, I just take every opportunity to learn as much as possible.
Next question is, what was the environment like last year during the championship win?
Oh! Okay, let's go back to the shelf, shall we?
Yeah.
So here's my fake ring. So that one's nice, but there it is. I have some other stuff, but it's to the side. I have the armband that I had to wear in. I have the jacket that was soaked to the nines in champagne. So it was truly incredible. I found out I was taken off the beat, so I'd covered the Raptors right up until game 2 of the finals, and I was hosting the Women's World Cup, and which was tremendous in itself. And I was absolutely devastated. I'm not going to lie to anyone that I couldn't do both, but they pulled me off just for 2 games, and then we went back to game 5 in Toronto, and I pleaded with one of my bosses. I said, if they go to game 6 in San Francisco, Canada is not playing in the World Cup. We had a 2-day break, I believe. I said, I will fly in and fly out of San Francisco just to cover courtside, just to cover live game 6. And then this was game 5 before they could have won it at home. And he's like, no problem, Kate. If they do it, you can go to San Francisco. Obviously thinking they weren't going back to Golden State. Well, lo and behold, we all know what happened. So but at this point too, I'm like, how did I get myself into this? I did a triple header on TSN, no word of a lie, drove right to the airport. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon, flew to San Francisco. I don't know how many hours of sleep I got. Had to be at morning shoot around the next morning in San Francisco, which was game day. And I kind of, the whole thing was just a blur. And then I covered the game. I remember covering the game. And then I was on the court, obviously, and I'm like in work mode at this point. And myself, Doris Burke, and who was the third there? Was it Ramona Shelburne? It was one more from ESPN. Anyways, the 3 of us were on the floor. We were getting Kyle, Freddie, and Kawhi. I was to get Kyle, and I was so pumped. But Kyle went and got his boys, obviously, and went on the stage. There's a rule, you can't touch the players once they go on the stage. So I'm like, oh my God, I lost my post-game interview. I literally thought it was the worst moment of my career. And then something happened. One of the PR guys or Kyle, someone looked at me and they said, to the locker room. We'll do the interview in the locker room. I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. I go to the locker room. All of a sudden I don't have a camera. I'm like, oh my God. Like it was just a disaster. It was a complete disaster. And then all of a sudden this guy opens the door to the locker room. He goes, TSN? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, come on in. Like literally, I think there were myself, Kristen Ledlow was in there, and then one other person was in there. There were like 3 reporters in the locker room. I opened the door, guys. It was immediate champagne, and I had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden I see Kyle. He's like, hey. And I'm like, hey. I'm like, ready to do this interview? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. But then the great part was I was in there and all the guys were in there. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to start interviewing all of them. And I did. And it was like, I can't even describe to you how chaotic this was. I was doing this interview with Pascal, Norm's like pouring a beer down my throat at this point. And I think I did like, oh gosh, I must have interviewed 5-6 guys. I left the locker room legitimately a little bit buzzed at this point, and I'm like, that was the greatest 25 minutes of my career. So there's a summary of the night. Oh, and I went home because like Oracle Arena isn't close to San Francisco. It's like at least a half an hour cab ride. And I was shaking because I was like drenched in champagne. I was so cold. I slept for 2 hours, flew back in the morning, and then was on air that afternoon for World Cup.
Wow.
So that's the story.
Yeah.
I know earlier you touched on you and Lowry's relationship, but are you good friends with anyone else on the Raptors?
Friends is a hard one. Definitely, like, you know, like I couldn't be happier for these guys. I make sure that there's a, you know, there's a professional boundary for sure. I mean, every single one of them I know because it's like a work colleague. So, you know, Pascal this year at All-Star was great. Just having him down there, but I mean, I wouldn't say friends by any stretch. Like, friends are people who come to my condo, who I share, you know, personal details with and everything like that. But from a professional relationship, I would definitely say, you know, Lowry, Pascal, OG, I adore Norm. I absolutely, right before COVID happened, actually, I was hosting Norm's bowl-a-thon for him. And that was the night that they found out that Rudy Gobert had tested positive. So we all got quarantined immediately. So yeah, I would say basically any of the main 7 guys that you currently see on the court and that they're amazing human beings. I cannot say enough about the character of the Toronto Raptors. Super biased though, you probably shouldn't take my opinion.
And then a good follow-up question for this actually is, do you ever get nervous talking to players on live air?
I've never once in my life been nervous talking to a player because I've truly always believed that they're just human beings who have incredible athletic gifts. I have been so incredibly nervous talking to a fellow sportscaster. I have had the pleasure of getting to know Doris Burke, and as a female, and any females, I mean, even men who are listening to this, when you are in the presence of Doris Burke, it is a different level. And she agreed to come on my podcast. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't remember my next question. And that's never happened in my 11 years at TSN. Yeah, I just, you know, being beside a woman who did so much for female sportscasters. And, you know, she tells these stories of when she was covering the Knicks, and she was the first woman to ever do color commentary for men's professional basketball. And just people berating her for even being on that broadcast because she was a woman. And like, there was no social media at that time. Imagine if there was social media and the absolute crap that she took. As a female, I can never repay her. And yeah, so that's been the only one. But like anyone else, like LeBron James, Dwayne, I'm like, hey, like, here are my questions. Like, I just really, and I think you have to have it being around pro athletes. But yeah, I think that, yeah, Doris is definitely the one where I'm like, oh my God, I probably look like a complete idiot right now.
Next question. What sporting event would you love to attend/cover?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It always was the Olympics, and then I got to go to Pyeongchang, which was absolutely, it's an incredible experience. For anyone who's never been to the Olympics before, it's different level because it's amateur. It's amateur sport. With the most pomp and circumstance you've ever seen in your whole life. So that was pretty much the top of the list. Covering a championship was the next, and I've had a pretty good run recently. I'm not going to lie to anyone. I would say, and I was supposed to go this year, but because of COVID, I didn't. I love the fan side of European soccer. And we were supposed to go to Euro this year and do like a bit of a tour. So Euro's definitely on the list, and yeah, and probably a World Cup as well would be right up there for myself. I'd like to experience something like that. And then these are weird ones too. I really want to go to F1 in Monaco. It just looks badass, to be quite honest with you. Like, I want to be on a yacht and watch a race. Like, that's never going to happen, but like, I'm just putting it out there.
Next question is, what was the breakthrough moment in your career?
Oh, definitely when I was at the Riot Radio on the breakout moment of my career. I think it was the day that I was in Barrie. I was working up in Barrie, Ontario, and I had to interview, I forget who it was from the PGA, to be quite honest with you, but I guess the clips got sent to TSN, and my former boss saw them, and he phoned me. And he said, hey, he's like, do you have any interest in coming up for an audition? And I was like, sure, why not? I'm like, I'm not really doing anything else. So I went, I had the worst interview of my whole life. I was like, well, I'm not getting a job here. It doesn't matter. And then I went and did an audition for SportsCentre. It was a 15-minute show. And I literally was like, well, I'm definitely not getting the job because I just got a cold call and then this is happening. And I remember having the most fun I could ever remember broadcasting, doing a 15-minute show. And not to be braggadocious. I did hit it out of the park. They brought up Rod Smith. We did this dual anchor, and I'm going to say that was my breakthrough moment because I walked off the set and my former boss was there and he's like, well, that's what I needed to see. And that was 11 years ago and I was hired right away. So I think sometimes when you don't think, when you think you're counted out and when you think you have no shot, it's actually when you have the biggest shot. So I definitely think that was a breakthrough because it got me to where I am today.
Next question, what are your future career goals?
That's a lot of people ask me that. And, I'm so patriotic. Like, I love being Canadian so much. A lot of people ask me about the States all the time, and I flirted with it for sure. I'm too old now to say, oh no, I didn't do this or didn't do that. But, I would like to actually, beyond broadcasting, I would like to grow Hermark into a way bigger project than it currently is. Like right now we have it just once a year. I would like Hermark to be rolling around the country, probably 4 times a year or so. And I want to bring our female athletes in this country to way more. I think we've had hundreds of girls go through Hermark. I want every year to be thousands. So from a career standpoint, I think I've done everything that I think I would love to have done in terms of, especially covering the Raps championship last year. I mean, I don't know what gets bigger. I still love my job, don't get me wrong, but I just think that Hermark could be so much bigger than it currently is. So that would be my ultimate goal, is in the next 5 to 10 years is just like blow up Hermark to as big as it can possibly be in this country.
And as you mentioned earlier, too, you are a big Chicago Bears fan, judging also by the helmet that you have sitting behind you.
This old thing?
Yeah, it's just a helmet, just sitting on your shelf.
There it is.
Do you happen to have any predictions for them this season?
Sydney, my poor Chicago Bears have let me down each and every year. And I think the good thing about this year is the NFC is wide open. First of all, no one should be like writing down any of these notes because no one has any idea what to expect from the NFL this year. Week 1 especially, like, not that I gamble, but I did take a look at the lines and I'm like, how do you even bet on week number 1? I'm going to say we're a solid 8-8 like every season for the Chicago Bears. So I'm going to go with a cool 500. I see that Mitch Trubisky is once again starting. We're not going to go with Nick Foles yet, but we got some injury issues with Montgomery as well. So you know what? This team that I've loved since I was 8 years old, and I can't not love them, but my goodness, they break my heart every year.
Next question is, what is the funniest interview you've done?
I once had to do an interview with Kyle. It's always coming back to Kyle. I know that. So Kyle Lowry, walk-off post-interview, and all of a sudden DeMar comes behind him and puts a towel literally over his face. And the entire interview, you can go Google it. Everybody go on YouTube when you're done. I'm sure it's somewhere. And Kyle just says, he's like, yeah, I don't know. He did the whole interview with literally a towel right over his face. So I remember that one. That was great. If they're in good moods, it's unbelievable how fun they can be. The other one was I interviewed Boogie Cousins after their win in the finals last year as well. and we were having a in-depth conversation about my high heels that I was wearing, because he's like, those are the nicest heels I've seen on a reporter since I've been doing it. And they are, I'm not like I'm a tomboy, but I love heels. And I was like, thank you. And then we were having this conversation. Lo and behold, it was live on air. So that one that goes up there too. But yeah, I would say those are probably two of my favorites.
Next question is, you answered it earlier, but I'll just put it out there again. Do you play basketball in the league currently? And also prior to COVID?
Prior to COVID, so I haven't played in league for a few years, but I play a ton of pickup. So I actually can't play in the league because of my schedule, which really sucks. I would if I could. I swear to you guys, I think I'm a better basketball player at 36 than I was at 18 because I play it so much right now. I love it. I love it more than anything. Like, I can't even tell you. I was out there today for an hour. And it was just 2-on-2 today because with the COVID rules too, we're trying to be like as good as possible. So I will, I don't know what it is in me. Like, I get so ridiculously ticked. Like, I'm not a negative person at all. Don't talk to me for a good hour if I lose at basketball. Like, even like pick up 2-on-2.
Yeah.
So yeah, the only part is like getting older. Like, I got the knee surgically repaired when I was 18. I think I mentioned that at one point. Just hurts now too. Like, my knees hurt now at work at night. So I'll never give it up. I'll play basketball until I cannot walk anymore. I know that, but yeah, I would love to play in a league, not conducive to my schedule, but I am at least out at minimum 5 days a week on a court. And the great part of Toronto is there's courts everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Another question that came in is, do you see a WNBA franchise coming to Toronto?
Ooh, isn't that a fun question? You know what? I would absolutely love a WNBA franchise to come to Toronto. I think the WNBA has made some really nice strides, not even close enough to where they should be, like the new CBA. And it's funny, I also work with Kia Nurse, who is a not only spectacular basketball player, but a spectacular human. And they're great. I was reading something online the other day, and it was saying that Steph Curry, every 25 minutes of a game, makes like $255K. The highest paid player in the WNBA right now makes $250 a season or $255 a season. This is just ludicrous to me at this point in time. I'm glad the women are getting a little bit more exposure. The guys in the bubble have done a really nice job wearing the orange hoodies. When it comes to the social issues too, the women, I just find we praise the NBA for what they do, and they do deserve a lot of credit. The women do it too. So I think in long story short, I think it's about showing support too of these women. So when we can return to, the stands and be in crowds, I think the biggest thing is showing up for these women and giving them the support they deserve, because my goodness, they are talented. Like, the things that these women do, like, they can put a guy on their ass pretty quick with a crossover. I'm just like, Kia's turnaround jumper, I'm sorry, nobody's stopping that. So I admire these women. I think, again, big companies need to step up. There's been some progress, like in the NWSL, have some major sponsors this year, which is just so critical. But I think if the right people were put in place here in Toronto, I totally think we would support a team. I do.
Next question is, have you ever met Drake before?
I have. Oh, I have. We're on a handshake basis. No big deal. So I don't really think, so when I have to cover Raptor games, I sit in what's called the bomb. So it's where the players enter and exit. So I've got like this little tiny desk in this one little area. And this was actually just this past season, where you always know when Drake's coming in because his like 7 security guards come in first, and then they make sure everything's cleared, and then Drake comes through. He has been absolutely lovely. He would stop and just like shake my hand. And then the last time we interacted, I can't even believe I'm like breaking this down. It's like more of a handshake something. And I was like, cool. Like, I'm just trying to play it cool. I'm like, thanks, Drake. It's good to see you. You know what I mean? So he's lovely to me. He might not even know my name, but he stops and acknowledges, which is, you know what? I'm going to say we're friends. Screw it. We're friends.
Next question. Since you are a former Ontario Tech and Durham broadcast team member. What are your favorite memories about being a student, and do you have any advice for any of the current students now?
Honestly, my favorite memories are covering the games. Not only was I on Riot Radio, I also was the in-game announcer for all Durham Lords basketball. So I love like getting on the mic every night and like introducing like to like AC/DC and stuff, and introducing the teams as they came on the court. Yeah, and again too, like I talk about making mistakes, but that made me feel comfortable in front of crowds, and we had to do a lot of stuff in front of live audiences, and even doing live hits at Raptor games. You have how many thousands of fans in the ACC or Scotiabank Arena, literally screaming like "Let's go Raptors" behind you, and you're trying to like do a nice hit on national TV, and like moments like that at Durham College kind of prepared me for it, because, and obviously there weren't like 20,000, unless you guys have 20,000 fans yet, but still like having people in the crowd and being able to compose yourself and do your job. It was like my favorite thing, like the learning of it. So that would be my favorite. I think just my best advice is the thing I said right off the top. It's just work ethic, and you know what, too, enjoy the years you have in college and in university, because you're never going to get them back unless you're a lifetime student, but that's probably pretty unlikely. So my biggest piece of advice would be really, really enjoy and go out to the games. Like, you know what, there could be some miraculous moments in U Sport and OCAA. There can be some buzzer beaters. Go have fun, go support your teams. So I just think that's the biggest thing. Enjoy where you're at.
Next question is, what's the best career advice you've ever been given?
The best career advice I was ever given in my entire life was to quit my current job. And this is, I know, which is crazy, right? But actually, I mean, there's a lot of things that led me up to TSN, but I actually did take the reason my undergrad took me 5 years instead of 4 years, I didn't fail. I took a year off to go work at Sportsnet. And Sportsnet had offered me an internship in the summer, and then I went on to take the position of the woman who hired me for the internship, and she did travel and expenses for all the on-air talent. At 22 years old, I thought that like one of the anchors was going to get sick one night, and then they just popped me on air, and that's how my career would work out. It didn't work out that way. But my boss at the time, his name was Stu, when the year was done, when the mat leave was done, and I knew I needed to finish school too at this point, he said to me, he goes, I'm going to offer you a job. He goes, I'm going to offer you a full-time job here of like cutting highlights and doing whatever. And he goes, but if you are serious about being on air, and I realized at this point that I really wanted to do, I really wanted to, you know, break down games and talk about games and do this on a full-time basis. He's like, I'm going to say quit and then go learn this craft. Like go to Rogers TV. You might not get paid, but you need to go get yourself on air somehow every single day of your life. And I literally looked at him and I shook his hand and I never went back. And so that's kind of like that one moment that I'm like, if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Next question is based on the Raptors. What do you think makes the Raptors so good?
Oh my God, do we have an hour? What makes the Raptors so good, I'll key in on just a few points here. Number one, and I know everyone keeps saying it on the broadcast, but the team currently you're seeing, and everyone just dismissed them because they don't have Kawhi Leonard on the team. Last time I checked, they still have Kyle Lowry. They have heart of a champion. And when you win a championship, it does something. It absolutely does something to the core of your team and puts a belief in your mind that no matter what's in front of you, you look at these two teams right now. We can look at talent, okay? And I don't even care sitting here telling you that Boston's the more talented team, for sure. You know, you can look at a bunch of these games and say the best players on the floor are, you know, Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, I mean, Marcus Smart, they've all been great. They don't have what the Raptors have. And win or lose in game 7 tomorrow night, the Raptors have a tenacity, they have a grit, they have a belief in them that the Celtics don't. So that's one. Number two, I'm going to tell you this right now, is the fact that their IQ is higher as a team, as a unit, than the majority of teams I watch in the NBA. When you really start breaking down basketball, it's the little tiny things that make a huge difference. I know Marc Gasol has not played well. Thank God he had those couple of good plays in the second half of the game yesterday. Marc Gasol's basketball IQ is unbelievable. The passes he can make, like, people look at his game and you're like, okay, no, yes. What Marc does, what you don't see, is you can't teach that type of stuff. Kyle Lowry, as we keep going back to, another guy. He's not the most athletically gifted guy, but he does other things on the court that will win you games every time. Fred VanVleet, an undrafted player, for God's sakes, right? The way he will just, he's developed this, like, honestly, this 30-foot shot to his game now. Like, it's just, it keeps going and going and going. Norm Powell, like Norm's development of game. Pascal Siakam, who didn't play basketball like 8 years ago. I mean, if you just put this all together, it's just an unbelievable unit. And as I say, whatever happens tomorrow night, I give full marks to this team, because my God, they're just so gritty. They've got an unbelievable level of heart, and my God, I love covering them.
Next question is, what advice would you give to someone who's currently a sports writer or broadcaster that is looking to get into an organization like TSN or Sportsnet?
I would say get as much experience as you possibly can. Experience is so key in our industry. As I keep mentioning, when I was at, the Riot Radio, when I was at UOIT, I was trying to do as much as possible. So I was doing the radio, I was doing in-game announcing, and I was doing Rogers TV. So I was literally working 3 different jobs. And I think that that's the biggest part. Because it's an industry where there are a lot of people that want to get in, because it's fun. Let's not beat around the bush here. I think the biggest thing is what differentiates you. Like, as a writer, there are so many sports writers out there right now. I particularly like certain types of sports writers. Someone who gives me a view, an angle, tells me a story versus telling me statistics. I'm a very statistical person. I'm going to give you like stats on the broadcast every night, but I'm not a writer. When I read something, tell me a story. So that's kind of like the biggest thing from a writing perspective. And as I said, when you go into these interviews with these big companies, whether it be TSN or you want to, write for something bigger like The Athletic, whatever it may be, tell them why you're different, because they have a million applications. Explain to them what sets you apart from every other writer, from every other journalist in the world. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just work your ass off and figure out a way that you are unique to the job.
Next question, which I'm actually interested to hear your answer about, is will you be attending any more DC/OTEC games anytime soon?
Well, I mean, this thing called COVID keeps getting in the way of everything right now, to be quite honest with you. I 100% think I would be at some type of event at some point in the future. You guys always come up with something somehow, some way. So it was super cool to see the Ridgebacks get a basketball team. I would have loved that so much when I was there. So I know the university and the college just keep expanding and growing. And what's nice too is that U of T has been trying to take credit that I'm a graduate for a long time, and then Western as well, because I went to Western for 1 year. And I like now that I think we can go out there and say, Ontario Tech and, Durham College, and people are like, oh yeah, we're growing, we're doing this, doing that. So sorry, that's just a little homerish there for the people watching. But yes, I definitely think in the future I will be at an event. We just need 2020 to speed up and go away.
Next question is, so we actually have one from the Ridgebacks PA announcer. So any advice for David to hype up the crowd?
Oh, I mean, I just really like AC/DC. Like, I think to hype up the crowd, what the great part is too? I always did feel like I had a lot of power with that microphone, right? Like, some days I was like, what am I even saying on here today? You know what? To hype up the crowd, I just think, feed off the energy of the team. And I think if you got a wicked team performance, you got some big shots, some big plays, make sure you jump in and you keep them going. The best thing in sports, as we know, and this is the only really crappy part about the bubble, I mean, the virtual fans are great, but let's face it, home court advantage, you can't substitute that. I mean, look at the Raptors and Celtics series. Every team's won, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, sorry. I guess the Raptors were playing at the Celtics in Game 6, but like it hasn't made a difference at all in the series. So yeah, just keep the crowd into it by accentuating those really big plays, David.
Next question is, can you talk about the initiatives you have been involved with promoting women in sport, specifically, like we talked about earlier, her mark?
So as I mentioned to you guys, her mark right now is just a one-day summit. TSN was really cool this year too, actually. I should mention this. And with COVID, when we were broadcasting from home, they actually allowed me to do a virtual her mark. So I interviewed, I think like 8 of our top female athletes in this country. I can't say enough about these women, honestly. They're like the greatest people on earth. But essentially it's a one-day summit. You get to apply into it, and we're looking for girls that they don't even have to be involved in sport, to be quite honest, just involved in their school or community. And we just want to keep them on the right track. And I think too, with like a lot of the Olympians, they want to do this type of stuff. It's just, it's very difficult from training and sponsorship perspectives. So they've been so amazing at supporting this initiative. And it's really important, in my opinion, to have young athletes meet these women, to meet the Kia nurses, the Tessa Virtues, the Marie-Philippe Poulin. Like it's, when you meet them and you see, first of all, they're super cool. Like, not that that has anything to do with anything, but they're super normal. They're super humble. They're super down to earth. But they've just worked to this level where they deserve so much more recognition than they've currently been given. But that's why all of us want this next generation to make sure that they do get to that level where we're not talking about them being underpaid, not getting enough exposure on television. So her mark is, in all honesty, the best thing I've ever done in my career. And as I said too, when I'm done being a sportscaster, I hope people don't say, oh yeah, like she covered the Raptors. I hope people say she founded her mark.
And another question kind of touches on what you mentioned earlier about how it's really important for men to support women in sports. One of the questions is, how can men support women's sports on social media?
You know what? That's a wicked question. I love that question so much. I think, on social media, for example, we always, and I get it too. And, I do it too, because we are so exposed to men's sports all the time. I think the big thing is, if you see something, like a woman make an amazing shot, right? Like an Elena Delle Donne, whatever, or whoever it may be, recognize it, say, like retweet it, do something like that. One of the coolest things I read this year was that orange hoodie, and I'm sponsored by Under Armour, so I'm even talking about a Nike hoodie here, was the #1 seller. It literally sold out. You could not buy that WNBA hoodie. Why is that? Because all the superstars in the NBA started wearing the orange hoodie. It takes things like this, you know what I mean, for these women to get even just like their merchandise, to a level that's acceptable. So I think when it comes to social media, if you see a great play, tweet it out, respond to it on Instagram, whatever it may be. I mean, these women put up incredible performances on a nightly basis. So that's a big thing. It does take men, to recognize this too. And I think the orange hoodie is just such a wicked example of that.
Mm-hmm. Next question that keeps showing up is, what's it like to be famous?
Oh, sorry, you cut out for 2 seconds there. One more time.
What is it like to be famous?
Oh God, I'm not famous. I'm not kidding you guys when I say that. My parents would just roll their eyes if they heard that. I would say it's people are so nice, and especially in this country. I mean, they just want to talk sports all the time. Recognizable. Yeah, I think fame's a weird word, to be quite honest with you guys. I think the one thing that I've always wanted to do with it, and just the platform that TSN's given me, is make sure I use it for good. And to do something, good in my life. And my big thing, obviously, I keep talking about it, is her mark. I do find it very weird when like people like want to take selfies or want to like, the autograph thing is just like, I just sit and talk about sports. I'm just a person who couldn't make it, but it's just a weird thing. Honestly, to this day, it's just weird. I don't get it.
And you mentioned a lot throughout your questions how that you took a lot of internships, you volunteered, you put a lot of hours in prior to getting an actual paying job. Have you ever considered doing that for someone else? So offering internships, offering volunteer positions for someone to follow you during your career?
So I certainly have, just on a nightly basis, brought people in to, shadow me to work, whatever it may be. And it's so tough too. And I used to not criticize, but I always ask myself, okay, why don't people do more? With the Raptors, for example, I literally cannot. I'm not allowed to bring people with me, and understandably so. I try to respond to as much as I can, through my website, through social media, whatever it may be. But recognizing I'm probably at a point in my career right now that I'm so restricted because of access. I just can't. So again, it falls back on Hermark. Hermark is a way that I can bring girls in. I can interact with them one-on-one. We can, let them meet the Olympians and do as much as we possibly can do with Hermark. So from an internship standpoint, I'm just in a position where I literally cannot do it. But I try my best to do it in different ways.
I think this is a really good last question to end on, but any predictions for Game 7?
Oh, come on, ladies. You know what my answer is going to be. Okay. I have one concern only, is just how much gas do they have left in the tank? There were 8, but saying that on both sides too. So there were 8 players in that game that played 50 plus minutes. 50 plus minutes. I mean, that is crazy if you think about it at that level. So I think it is going to be a battle. I don't think you're going to see it like Game 1 or Game 5, which was a blowout on Boston's side. I don't think the Raps, they didn't come this far not to just give it 150%. I think it's going to be extremely tight. I think it's going to be a back and forth battle. And I'm going to say the Raptors win by 3. No big deal.
Well, first off, we just want to thank everyone who put questions in for the Q&A. Made it really interactive. It made it a lot of fun for us. And Kate, I'm sure it made it really exciting for you too as well. I just want to say thank you. I learned a lot today, not just about your career, but also the mark that you really want to leave. And that's something that you touched on during the whole course of this interview. You really are adamant about leaving a mark. Also, you mentioned Doris Burke. And I want to say too that you are going to do that for other women who are coming up in the sports industry. So that is really important. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's awesome, ladies. I appreciate it so much. And I know your season's been derailed a little bit here, but all the best to you guys. And I promise I'll make it out to a U Sport or a OCAA event in the future at your school for sure. I promise.
Thank you.
Awesome.